So thank you very much to everybody who is attending today, particularly on this very, very hot day. We're very impressed that you've made it. Um, Thought everybody would be here, there, and everywhere. So thank you very much for joining us. We are recording this session because it goes onto our platform for our Jigsaw RE subscribers. And for those who couldn't attend today who had signed up. So, but none of your cameras are on. You can't be seen. It's just our faces that keep popping up in the corner, hopefully. If you do have any comments or questions as we go through today's webinar, please do pop them in the chat. And whoever's not talking will attempt to respond, and we'll bring them up at different points and verbalize them if that is helpful as well. There'll also be all our contact details at the end of the webinar. So anything that doesn't get answered or anything you want further information on, do get in contact with us then. But yeah, just as another reminder, we are recording, but you guys can't be seen. So please do put all of your questions into the chat. Okay, we're going to get started because I know more people are filtering in, but I am aware it's hot and everyone has somewhere cooler to be, particularly us sat here in our offices doing this. So we will crack on quickly. And our aim today is to try and be as brief as we can on our briefing of getting ready for September 2026, which does seem like a long way off and not long enough all at the same time. So I'll just introduce who we are. We've got three lovely people here today from the RE team at Jigsaw RE. We've got myself, I'm Hannah, I'm program lead, co-program lead, and we've got Laura, who is the advisor for the Midlands, and Sarah, who's our advisor for the Southwest. So the three of us will pop up here and there for different sections. And we're going to try and cover four, not insignificant areas today, but like I said, the aim is to be as brief and to the point as possible, with follow-up handout coming out your way with lots more information and key questions for you to reflect back on when it's less hot and you've maybe got a bit more headspace and capacity at some point to do. So we're going to try and look at the kind of new national guidance that's been coming out and a bit of a summary about some of those important ones, what those might mean for you as RE subject leads. Key implications of Ofsted updates. Has been a great big change going on there this year. So just what we think that might mean for you guys looking forward. We're going to have a little look at Wales and some specific updates about reports that have come out from RVE guidance. And then thinking about how we and you can support yourselves and your staff moving forward for the academic year as well. So trying to be as practical as possible. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Laura.
Hello. My internet connection just told me it's unstable, so everybody keep fingers crossed that this is going to be fine, and I will
It's
be
the heat.
brief. Yeah, it's not happy. Okay, so the DfE white paper, which I'm sure you've all heard of, Every Child Achieving and Thriving, came out in February alongside SEND reforms and another document that was around kind of workforce and getting more teachers into school. The main thing about both of these papers is that nothing is changing in policy or law, and it's just about the vision for what the government want to take forward. And I'll talk about the SEND reforms separately, but it is about vision. So the three overarching aims the government have put forward in what we probably are doing and thinking about every day anyway are creating a school experience that goes from narrow to taking it narrow to broad, ensuring those who have been sidelined are included. Inclusion comes through in everything, loads, in every aspect of our roles, and taking children and communities from withdrawn to engaged. So inclusion, engagement, and just enriching curriculums, which I'm sure you're all thinking about all the time anyway. It's got a good focus on standards and outcomes. Again, we're thinking about that. We are always thinking about that excellent teaching. What is lovely in here, hopefully, is that investment in professional development and really thinking about evidence-informed practice. But there are some messages that we're used to hearing, like ambitious and knowledge-rich, that are kind of continuing through this. So as I've put a rough timeline up there. It's a rough timeline because that's all we've got, but you can see the kind of long-term vision that's being presented here. So it's nothing immediate, and it's no policy changes or legal changes at this point. Reflections to think about though that come through in this white paper. So are your curriculum and pedagogy choices intentional, evidence informed, and well sequenced. Um, so if you are a Jigsaw RE school, or if you are using a different scheme, why is Jigsaw RE or the scheme or the planning that you are using, why have you chosen that? What adaptations do you make to this, and why do you make those adaptations? Thinking about context, thinking about your children, thinking about your whole school development and being part of that. There's a bigger sense, I know Hannah will talk about this, of kind of where you fit within the whole school as opposed to those kind of dives into individual subjects. And what can you do now is a big thing, but also what do you think you should maybe hold, knowing that there are changes and things coming up? And as we go through this webinar, I think that might be a question that you want to be reflected on as we go through. What is a now, and what of what we say is a hang on a minute, I'm just going to pause this because I know something is coming up centrally. So I think those are two good reflections to kind of take us through the whole webinar. Hannah.
Thank you very much, Laura. So, I'm going to take us back to November now, where we had the wonderful curriculum and assessment review, and just think about that with our lovely RE lens. So, I'm sure lots of you are already aware that the RE kind of element was quite different in this review, and RE's importance is not currently reflected in its standing in the curriculum, was kind of what came out from it. So, there was a recommendation that RE moves into the national curriculum to improve access to high quality provision and prevent further diminishment of the subject. But that was all going to be through a staged approach. And that started off with consultation with a variety of voices throughout the RE community, from teachers to professionals, and a very, very big job of drafting what might look those draft programs of study might look like. And that was then all sent by Vanessa to the government at the end of March. And that's kind of where we've got to. You might have hoped that by this point we know a bit more, but we don't. As you can see on the slide, NatTre issued a really helpful little update from the department stating that they kind of received that, they value the importance of RE, and that is going to be part of their decision making in issuing a new national curriculum. So we don't currently know where that's got to, other than it was recommended in the curriculum and assessment review that it becomes sort of looked into for going into the national curriculum, but we don't know where that's got to. So I'm really sorry that's not the most helpful for planning and thinking through for, you're moving forward necessarily. But it is stick to what you've got for now, stick to what you're doing, and keep your eyes open. Just this last couple of weeks, the DfE have issued a statement saying that a public consultation of the draft programme of study will open in September. We don't quite know how much of the draft will be in that. That is their statement read off the website. But there's possibility that September brings us a few more insights. But as we know, government guidance can change quite quickly and not necessarily come at the most helpful time for us on the ground, can't it? So I think keep your eyes open. NatTre will obviously be issuing statements. Jigsaw will be issuing statements and guidance whenever we can to our schools. So please do check that Jigsaw emails are getting through to you. We've had a lot of spam and sort of trust-wide blockings going on of emails across the board, and I know other organisations have as well. So it's worth checking. And you can also sign up to DfE updates directly as well. So keep yourself in the loop, and we will attempt to support you as and where we can on this one, really. It's about as far as I can go. So I'll go back to Laura.
I'll add in on that as well, though. I know because I work across Midlands, we've got a number of new syllabuses that have come out in the Midlands. So that is your point of change. And obviously anything that happens to the national curriculum will take time. So don't, I wouldn't, I think I'd be in a position about, oh, I've got a new curriculum, but that's coming out and what do I do? Your new curriculum is still still your statutory. So stick with that. And if you are in a new curriculum area and you are a Jigsaw RE school, do get in touch with your regional advisor because we're there to help and update everything. So back to those DfE documents that came out in February. This is the other big one that kind of came along with that, which is the SEND reform consultation. And we know, don't we, that inclusion and inclusivity is a headline part of all aspects of what the government are doing. We're talking about it a lot. There's so this again, though, this document isn't a change in policy, practice, or the legal requirements. We're still under the same send legal requirements as we've always been. This document was part of a consultation, so it's gone out, it's been consulted on, and they're back with it now. Again, a bit like the curriculum assessment review, we're now in the bit where it's back with the government, it's in their hands. So some of the things that they had proposed to do will require legal change. So that will be something that will take time. And you can see on this timeline here, actually, we're looking 4 years down the road, even in their kind of rough estimates of where we get to in a new send system. So I think there's a lot of reaction and response, but again, being calm about the fact that you know what we are working within the same system. Let's take it might be that there are some nice messages from it in terms of kind of clear ambitions to improve, clarity, consistency. It's very, I feel like there's a lot of focus on the mainstream and just that mainstream practice as well, which we're always looking to do as teachers. I think the key messages that come from this is that the move towards a more consistent national system. And I think if that comes, thinking about the classes that I've been in, to know that there was this standard to meet that I could access, it would be a really good, would have been a really good support. Right support, right place, right time. And that real strength in mainstream inclusion and developing that. There are things that are coming now with this. So you'll see on there the Inclusive Mainstream Fund. So there is additional money coming to schools. That will be with your schools soon. Alongside accepting the extra money comes that December deadline. So if you are also a Senko, it's probably on your radar anyway, but if you're not, it's worth just knowing that there's an additional strategy document, a new one, that your Senkos will be, I'd say managing, I'm not going to say filling in because we don't really know. We're waiting for the guidance, the additional guidance about how that's going to be filled in. And there's aspects of curriculum. So it might be that your Senko is starting to ask you about how we meeting need and really thinking about again that whole school inclusive practice and how we do that. So there are some movements, but not massive ones, and no kind of complete change into a new system. What I think is important to think about with this, though, is your curriculum working for all learners? It's something that we're always thinking about. It's still as relevant as ever. Can every pupil access the core learning in RE? And so with your curriculum, your RE curriculum hats on, if they can't, what can we do about that? What do we already do that's about access? Can we articulate that? So what are the strategies and elements of your curriculum that do ensure accessibility for all learners and particularly those with SEND? So just being reflective on that as much as you can and thinking through. We've got a few different things. We had a recent adaptive teaching webinar, if again, that is on the portal if you are a Jigsaw RE school, and doing some work around that. So just starting to think about accessibility and inclusive teaching, it's never going to be a bad thing and it's going to set you in the right stand for those updates as well. It's me.
And back to me. Sarah is coming, I do promise. So she just happens to have had the section slightly later. So we're not being excluding. So Ofsted changes again, something that sort of came through with the new framework back in November. Although it is worth noting that again, Ofsted have just released a version 2.0 of the framework, which is for implementation in September. There are very few changes that are relevant to what I'm going to talk you through now in terms of RE subject leadership. But again, if you are a PSHE lead as well, there are a few tweaks of wording and things that you might want to go back and reflect on. But I'm sure your SLT will be giving you most of the information of this sort of from top down anyway. But I think the things with Ofsted, obviously we know they've changed to the system of no longer awarding a single Ofsted grade, which hopefully we're all aware of now. But I think for us as RE leads, what comes into play here is kind of a slight shift in methodology of their inspections. And that's really important to try and get our head around. So kind of the first point, I suppose, that's changed here is that instead of those deep dives that we all got used to, and that fear of being the person who was summoned into the chair with your folder and being asked all the questions and needing to know all the answers yourself, actually they're moving now into case sampling. So how they're gathering those evidence in those inspections has changed. And it's less reliant on us as subject leaders specifically in that space, and it's more about building a rounded picture of a typical experience, a sort of across the school for pupils. And I think it's safe to say that it's your senior leadership who may still be you, not going to lie, but that are going to end up in that seat with the inspectors directly, which actually makes it far more important, I think, that we have a voice and we make our voice really heard as RE and RVE leads, so that we know what we're doing. So they're going to be doing more case sampling. And this is following the individual sort of experience of pupils throughout their sort of school journey, through progress across subjects, and that they will often focus, I think, in those on those disadvantaged or SEND or social care, or children facing barriers to learning in who they pick. And this aims to build a kind of a bigger picture of how the school is meeting the needs of specific pupils, and considering that kind of cross-curricular learning and experience, which obviously includes RE. And then that hopefully means they can more effectively evaluate the inclusion, the support, and the participation that's working across the school. So RE is going to contribute to that wider evaluation of pupils' experience rather than just being something that's considered slightly more in isolation. And this focus on the typical experience, I think, means that we have to think about that consistency within our subject across classes, within classes, and that progress over time, because the inspectors are going to be looking for that first-hand evidence and that normal school practice. We want to make sure that all of our staff are really confident in what we're talking about and that we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, so that it comes through. So for implications for us, I suppose, this is the purple box on the slide, is we need to still be able to really articulate our intent, implementation, and impact of our subject in the curriculum. And because it's maybe not going to be us as the voice in the chair directly explaining that. We need to make sure that all of the staff in our school know why RE is so important. And I think RE is a particularly tricky subject sometimes to do that with. It's the one that you get a lot of staff insecurities and worries about. It's the one that can slip off the timetable because I don't really quite want to face doing it. So this is where we've got to really get everybody on board and make sure that CPD and support for our staff is there. And we want to really sing about how RE contributes to the school's wider health and well-being and inclusion and participation. Because as I'm going to show you in a minute, I think it's kind of your secret weapon a little bit in what Ofsted are looking for. So I'm not going to talk this really long table through with you because, like I said, we're trying to be brief in our briefing here. But this will be on the handout. Obviously, we've now got all the different evaluation areas within the Ofsted framework. And obviously, RE comes through in the curriculum and teaching. It is a statutory subject. It needs to be there. And that intent, implementation, and sequencing needs to be clear and thought through and effective. And that needs to be able to be talked about. But in thinking about that wider inclusion and that wider whole school element of making sure our schools are really developing the children as a whole, RE has a massive role to play. And we've tried to pull together for you guys some different ways that we think it feeds into those other evaluations as well. So do look at that table in the handout. And if you are a Jigsaw RE school, then there's going to be updated Ofsted document details going onto the portal as well. So there's even more information if you really are in that window and want to be clued up as much as possible. But the curriculum and teaching element still has that intent, implementation, and impact at its heart. And again, we've tried to pull together some reflection questions, not to talk through loads at you now because you're all too hot and bothered. But in your own time and when you're action planning, hopefully you can go back to these on the handout and think about, those key elements that Ofsted are looking for, and where and how is your subject, being really purposeful with those, making sure that, that overarching ambition for all pupils, is there in RE throughout the school and consistently in lots of ways. The other area on those kind of criteria, just wanted to pull out, is this personal development and well-being strand, because I think, you know, yes, a PSHE curriculum obviously links with this really easily. And if you're a Jigsaw PSHE school, you'll have had lots of information about where and how that supports. But I think RE also really feeds into this really obviously. And interestingly, lots of the most recent Ofsted reports that are coming out are referencing inclusivity, respecting differences, tolerance, appreciating other cultures and beliefs, preparing for life in modern Britain. And these are all things that a good RE curriculum is directly feeding into. So if we're thinking about Ofsted looking at that whole school, that bigger picture, we have a really big role to play in that through our broad and diverse curriculums. Particularly if you're a Jigsaw PSHE school as well, because of course both programs have real similarities between them and that kind of continuity of learning. So things like SMSC, British values, the sense of own belonging and beliefs, are all elements that feed into this. So do think about how and where your subject is contributing. Maybe you want to have a session with your PSHE lead or with your SLT about making those links really clear, about communicating those links to your SLT so that they're able to communicate them to Ofsted. But more importantly, it's about the children, isn't it? That's what we're here for. And this is absolutely fundamental to them. So I think ensuring that your curriculum thinks about this is just for their benefit, which is what we want.
Back to me. Sarah's coming. So I think again, I'm going to add on to what you're saying, having looked at some of those comments about that really come through in the personal development well-being that are linked to RE is in all schools. So if you are of faith, you are Church of England, I've seen it on Catholic schools, that actually there's that more leveling out as well of that often are still looking at those elements. I saw one that actually directly referenced children's ability to remember their learning in Christianity within a faith school being in the personal development and well-being section um of the report. So yeah, it really does come through, which I find really interesting and a really good moment as an RE lead to kind of fly the flag of, look, we're helping across the board. So I'm actually going to talk about the Church of England Statement of Entitlement for anybody here that is a Church of England school, because you've got another change along with it, the same as everybody else's. So the new Statement of Entitlement was published in January, but it starts being referred to in SIAM's inspections this September. So it's not a change in SIAM's, but IQ 6 and 7, which look at the effectiveness of RE, refer to the C of E statement of entitlement. And so that what you're doing with your RE curriculum needs to match up what's happening with the statement of entitlement. So it's good to know what's happening here. The tone of this document is a bit different. It's a bit more updated. So previously, having been familiar with it as a RE lead in a Church of England school and now a chair of governors in a Church of England school. Previously, there was a lot of guidance and it kind of had that kind of overarching theological value framing. There's more operational kind of explicit information in there now, and you can see that it is lining up to best practice in kind of national RE, and some of the examples are on here. So it really links to RE being a high profile academic subject. It needs to be distinct from collective worship, which is the same across any school, and taught in a way that is objective, critical, and pluralistic. So they also now have a clear review cycle. of when they're going to look at the statement of entitlement again, which is, again, that more intentional operational support. Here we've got that it aligns more to the National Content Standard. In terms of the Christianity, it's at least 50% Christianity. And that's a real strength of clarity in that is the expected minimum rather than the guidance. So that again, being slightly stronger. It also talks about Christianity as a diverse global living faith, which I think links into that religion and worldviews approach. So those things that we're talking about in terms of diversity, that comes in with Christianity. And there is work happening within the Church of England to support that. And it's worth going and having a look on their website at those things as well. More fully aligned with religion and worldviews. They're being explicit about including non-religious worldviews. And there's repeated emphasis on personal worldviews, which links a lot to some of the spirituality and flourishing that comes through in the SIAMs and in the Statement of Entitlement. And then there's explicit references to specific pieces of RE pedagogy, so disciplinary knowledge, talking about theology, philosophy, and human and social sciences. It talks about religious literacy, and it talks about assessment of those different forms of knowledge, which again, if you're Jigsaw RE school, all of those things are embedded in. Disciplinary knowledge can be brought in, so there's extra resources around that. So do reach out to us if you're looking at this and thinking, oh, maybe I need to have a little bit of I was going to say a deeper dive. That's gone into my brain, isn't it? A bit of a deeper look into this. So do reach out to us. I think just checking, are we at 50% Christianity? Do we have inclusion of non-religious worldviews? Can you and staff articulate where the personal worldview development occurs? In Jigsaw RE, you've got those pause points and help me reflect that are built into every lesson. Is there that shared language around personal worldviews? And are we linking that to kind of spirituality and flourishing, words that come through quite a lot? Have you considered disciplinary knowledge and how that's built into your curriculum? We do have resources for that. It's something that we're looking at continuing to develop and support with. So it's worth having a look at what we've got and keeping an eye out over the next year as well. And are you familiar with the National Content Standard and kind of those links to it? Because it is referred to in that statement of entitlements. There's definitely a bigger alignment here and something that's a lot more operational than it has previously been. So it's worth having a look at that, particularly if you are in your SIAMS window. SIAMS helpfully publish the schools that they're going to be looking at next year. So I don't know if it's been released yet because I've been through it this year. So I've got a bit of a sigh of relief on the SIAMS front. But it's worth looking out for if you're in that window in next academic year and having a look at this. That's me again.
It's me. It's my turn.
Yay! She's here.
I have been in the chat though, so that's all good. So we are hopping across the board now into Wales. Before I kind of go into updates, just a kind of reminder of what the picture is in Wales and the expectations. So always like slight differences across our lovely four nations. So in Wales, we are talking about RVE. We're talking about religion and values and ethics. And that sits as part of the humanities area of learning and experience, or AOLE. And the RVE guidance for Wales gives advice on ways in which RVE should be taught, and it sets out the legal requirements. Interestingly, there is no right of withdrawal for any pupils. So that change was made when the curriculum for Wales was updated. So RVE must be objective, critical and pluralistic. RVE must have regard for the locally agreed syllabus, and that includes schools with a religious designation as well. Christianity must be one of the main worldviews taught, as well as non-religious philosophical convictions, and that was a key update when the curriculum for Wales came in. Other worldviews outside of those can be determined locally. So Catholic schools will follow the new Religious Education Directory, and Church in Wales will follow the RVE guidance, but are allowed to teach according to the tenets of the faith. So RVE must be underpinned by humanities statements of what matters and follow the statutory guidance. It must provide opportunities to fulfil the 4 core purposes of the curriculum for Wales. And within that, there are sub-lenses that can help in the planning of your learning journey, but those aren't mandatory, those are sort of suggested. And Estyn is the body, inspection body in Wales, not Ofsted. Your SAC rate is referred to as SAC RVE. And as always, with any kind of questions or support for any Welsh schools, whether you're a jigsaw school or not, my lovely colleague Heather Hanson is our regional advisor for Wales, who's shared all this information with me. She's very busy doing some A-level marking and things at the moment. But if you do have any specific questions about Wales, we will give you an email address at the end that you can contact, and that will get filtered through to Heather. So let's have a look at some recent updates. Thank you, Hannah. So just as we have Ofsted subject reports here in England, so Estyn produces subject reports for Wales. And so there was a report published relatively recently by Estyn, which was based on inspection work carried out in schools during last academic year, 2024 to 2025. And it's entitled Developing the Humanities Area of Learning and Experience. Now, obviously, what I'm saying is specific to Welsh schools, but actually a bit like the Deep and Meaningful Ofsted report that came out in, was it 2024 for us in England, there's a real reminder about general what makes good practice and areas that are often weaker. And, you know, I think they are applicable to all schools. So as I go through this, although I'm speaking specifically to our Welsh colleagues, if you're not in Wales, do think actually, where are we with this in our school? Because good practice in Wales is good practice everywhere. So the opening paragraph of the report states that it was found there is variability in the implementation of the humanities area of learning and experience across the schools that were visited. Where practice was strongest, schools prioritised humanities and allocated sufficient teaching time, enabling collaborative curriculum design, purposeful professional learning and clear leadership. Because obviously within humanities, you've got several subjects. So where schools did it well, they made sure that all those subjects, so RVE, history, geography, had a fair share of time. So in these cases where practice is strong, teachers supported pupils well to make connections across the disciplines. They planned for meaningful progression in knowledge, understanding and skills. And there was strong practice that included rich learning experiences to nurture curiosity, identity, and a sense of cynefin. Now, if that is a new word for you, it's one of those that you can try and translate, but it's slightly untranslatable. But it means that sense of connection to a place, its history, its culture, its people. So in England, a lot of locally agreed syllabuses will have sort of local studies. This is similar, but with more kind of heart to it. So that's cynefin, your word for the day. So if we pop onto the next slide, Hannah. Thank you very much. So the report picked up some areas to develop. And as I said, although this is coming from the Estyn report, very much for anyone who's leading RE in their setting or RVE to think, how well are we doing this in our school? So here are the areas for development. So RVE was particularly underrepresented out of those humanities subjects. Compared to history and geography. Schools didn't really allocate enough time to it within that humanities area. And planning for RVE in many primary schools was at an early stage of development and lacked depth. Pupils' experiences were limited because teachers lacked specific, subject-specific professional learning. And then pupils often experienced a superficial view of religion and spiritual aspects because learning was not planned through the RVE disciplinary lenses and sub-lenses. So many schools taught major world religions, but did not go beyond festivals and familiar narratives. And I know that's definitely a picture that we see in schools beyond Wales as well. And teaching missed out opportunities to explore multiple viewpoints, interpretations and lived experiences, particularly in Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. So again, that's sort of thinking about our worldviews approach. Pupils had few opportunities to deepen their understanding of religious and non-religious views or to engage with complex concepts. And at secondary, pupils experienced a lack of opportunity to consider a wide range of religious and non-religious views on complex topics and engage with the sub-lenses. And then limited specialist staffing, particularly in geography and RVE, negatively affected provision. Teaching by non-specialists without adequate support impeded progression and the depth of understanding. If we pop on to the next one. There we go, thank you. So schools also did not take account of diversity within Wales and the impact of colonisation well enough. Inappropriate activities were sometimes used in class and narratives were oversimplified. Schools often missed opportunities to show how examples of Black, Asian and minority ethnic people and communities had contributed positively to society. And I think we're all aware that over the last few months, that's something we all need to be doing so that our children are engaging with correct information and representations rather than other things they might be seeing across the media as well. RVE was frequently included through tenuous or tokenistic links, which limited meaningful learning, and cross-curricular themes were based on sort of links that limited opportunities for pupils to make meaningful connections. And then leaders did not ensure that pupils had opportunities to make progress, including deepening their understandings of religious and non-religious worldviews. And pupils often repeated similar low-challenge tasks across year groups. And too few schools provided visits to places of religious or cultural significance, encounters with diverse communities, and this really reduced people's understanding of lived religion. So quite a few points there to pick up on. If I was a school in Wales, I would feel maybe a little overwhelmed looking at all of those, but I would maybe think, actually, for me in my school, and this is something we'll talk about in a minute, what's going to be the next priority? What's going to have the biggest impact on teaching and learning in my school, rather than try and hit all of those in one go, which leads us nicely to the next slide. So we've given you a big kind of background picture of things that are going along behind the scenes, sometimes going along quite slowly, but bearing all that in mind, and as Laura said, thinking about what we want to move forward with and what we're going to kind of pause and wait to see where things fall. This is the sort of final part of our session today, where we are getting you thinking about your role as RE lead in your school and how you can get yourself into the strongest position for next academic year. So these are thoughts that you might want to have over the next few weeks, or potentially at the start of next term, because June and July are not always the best times to have clear thoughts when you're working in schools. So these are also all mapped out on the handout that everyone who registered will be sent. So don't worry too much about taking furious notes. So the first thing to do is to focus on your subject review, and I'm going to show you some resources that we have for our Jigsaw schools to help with this, so that you get a clear picture of what's working well, what could be improved, a kind of an overview of where you are now. And that can come from you as RE leads, but also consider how you're going to collect the voices of your pupils and of your staff team as well. So I'll show you some resources we have for that in a minute. And if you are a Jigsaw school, you might like to go back into the portal and rewatch, or watch if you didn't make it, our 2 subject leader webinars that ran in the autumn term, because they have got some good advice there as well. So if you've been lucky this year to do observations, learning walks, you've had a chance to do any book looks or conversations with pupils, all of those can kind of feed into you getting that overview of where you are at the moment. So out of that, a bit like I said with the kind of the Welsh guidance, don't try and do everything all at once, because you're setting yourself up for stress and failure, but maybe pick out 2 or 3 priorities for next year. In particular, if there are any areas that link to your school development plan, like Laura was talking about the SEND white paper, and we know with Ofsted, inclusion is a massive focus across the board. So if you know as a school, you're going to be thinking about how you can make sure all of your children are accessing all of your curriculum, then I would suggest, why doesn't that be one of your RE priorities? So you're not trying to reinvent the wheel by yourself, but you're working within that whole school context, thinking about all the children's journey throughout the school. So just 2 or 3 priorities for next year. Think about also what you can do yourself, but also what you'll need to ask your colleagues to do, and make that manageable for them as well. think about how you're going to know if you're achieving your aims, what are going to be your milestones throughout the year. Can you plan in staff meetings, any learning walks, or book looks or portfolio looks, pupil conversations? So if you kind of have that in your headspace from September about those touch points during the year, you'll find that takes a lot of the pressure off as you go through. And then thinking about whoever is teaching RE in your school. For some of you, you will be teaching all the RE in your school. For some of you, it will be class teachers. For some of you, it might be a subject that is delivered during PPA by HLTAs. For some of you, it might be something that people often give to supply or cover staff when they are in as well. So thinking about anyone who teaches RE in your school, what support are they going to need? And how can you use our webinar library in the community area if you're Jigsaw School? Or if not, keep an eye on our webinars that come up very regularly. We've got lots of ambitions for webinars next year. And do also let us know if there's an area you would like any particular CPD for us to kind of create something for. Think about if you've got new staff joining your team, about how you're going to get them on board with your approach to RE and your expectations. Can you use, as I said, staff meetings if there's a particular focus of pedagogy or practice you want to bring up? Are there any individual year groups or individual worldviews where you think your staff need maybe more support and training? And for you as a PSHE, as an RE lead, what do you need to help you feel more confident in your role? Is there a local network that you can plug into? How can we support you in your own professional development? Then thinking about assemblies. So some of you may be collective worship lead, some of you may not. It's one of those things that often the two roles get put together, although they should be quite distinct. Remember that assembly or collective worship time does not count towards your RE curriculum time. But are you going to have an RE launch assembly in September? If you're a Jigsaw School, to kind of go over the charter, meet the OWL crew, go through the parts of the lessons. Are you going to have weekly RE assemblies? We provide those for our Jigsaw Schools. Are there any festivals or special days you want to highlight, kind of broadening children's learning and experiences beyond what's provided in the curriculum? And then enrichment, we've got some updates from the DfE guidance I'll come back to in a minute, more updates. But the main thing with enrichment is about making it manageable and sustainable, not kind of panicking and planning loads of things for a particular year group or a term. The most meaningful enrichment supports what children are already doing, and it is there kind of building on their progression every year. So you, again, that also thing of looking at what's a child's journey through the school, and enrichment becomes part of that as well. So that could be trips and visitors. It could be how you mark special days within your school as well. And we'll look at some of those in a minute. And then a chance to refresh your resources. So thinking about artifacts, books, what needs replacing, what needs repairing. If you've got new worldviews or new inquiries you're doing, what do you need to resource them? Where's your budget coming from? Is there something you could ask the PTA for as well? So those are kind of your sort of 6 next steps. So if we go on to the next slide, just to showcase a few of the things that we have available. So if you are a Jigsaw RE school, on the portal, you will have an area, our subject leader support area. And within the monitoring section of that, you have access to an English version and also a Welsh version as well for your subject leader audit. We've got lots of different things to think about, and then you can rate where you are in your school, your confidence rating from 0 to 5. And again, don't try and do everything on that list, but use that as a starting point to pick up a couple of priorities. We've also got questionnaires for your staff, and for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, different pupil voice forms that you can use to kind of get that feedback from everyone in your school. So that should help you there. And then in terms of your staff CPD, as I mentioned, we have our webinar library. So you can see the 4 sort of buttons up at the top here. So for you as a subject leader, if you want to catch up on those autumn sessions, our Jigsaw RE themes, if there's a particular area, for example, the adaptive teaching or creativity or particular worldview that you want to have some support with, that's where they're all stored. And then just a reminder of our different training packages. So We get you started for free as a Jigsaw School. We have access to all our webinars for free. If you did want something that was more tailored to your school or to your trust, we can provide twilight or sort of staff meeting or inset sessions designed for you at an additional cost. So you can find out more about that on our website as well. Also, if you're a Jigsaw School, don't forget you have got access to the school support team. We'll share their email address in a minute. Your regional advisors, 3 of us here today. We run 3 regional network meetings a year for our different areas. We also have an additional network, which Laura is one of the people who runs for our SEND or AP schools, including if you're a mainstream school with a SEND unit on site. We have a Facebook community for our RE schools. There's a termly newsletter or sort of what's new updates that go out regularly. Again, make sure they're not going to your spam as well. Okay, on to the next one. So as I said, lots of different options for assemblies to launch, and then thinking, and actually just a little plug, because there is a collective worship webinar that is coming out on the 8th of July. So if you want to kind of do more around assemblies and collective worship, if you go onto the website where you signed up for this webinar, you can sign up for that one. That is being done as a pre-recorded session. So as soon as you register, that'll be logged, and from the 8th of July you'll be sent a link to the recording, or it will go onto the portal. So that will give you much more detail around legal requirements and statutory guidance, but also best practice. But think about, what do you want your assemblies to look like? How's it working again for you this year? How are you involving your staff and your pupils? Do you have a termly theme? Do you have a weekly theme? And also reminder that all of our Jigsaw assemblies, we have Bible readings and prayers suggestions if you are a church school as well. And in our set 2 assemblies, there's also an RVE links tab as well. So you can kind of, if you're a Welsh school, make links across there. And then if we think about enrichment, so on our portal, we have already got activities for Fair Trade Fortnight, which is in September, Earth Day, which is in April, International Day of Play, which I think is May or June, Advent, obviously that's in December as well. So those resources are there for you. You don't have to use them at those times. For example, the Earth Day resources, if your school has an environment or a big green week at another point in the year, you can go and visit those then. If you're planning any trips to places of worship, in the community area, there's a Crossing the Bridges section where there's lots of templates for you to help you plan a trip, to make booklets to take on the trip, to follow up. There's also some examples, if you can't go anywhere, of a couple of images from a few places of worship as well. I've done a webinar, it feels like a long time ago, it's probably last year or even longer than that now, but you can take a look at that. Also to flag up Interfaith Week, which will be this year from the 8th to the 15th of November. If you've never done anything about Interfaith Week before, put it in the diary. We will be producing some resources that you can use for that. It's a really great theme this year about light, so festivals of light, but then also kind of thinking about guiding us to a shared future. So it's lots more will be coming on that, but get it in the diary for now. And as I said, we do have a DFE update that came out very recently, which are the new enrichment benchmarks, came out earlier this month. And it talks about having a strategically aligned enrichment offer, broad and well-rounded, well communicated, that celebrates participation and achievement, an enrichment offer that is shaped by your school community. It is accessible and engaging. It is working in partnership with local organisations. It is outcomes focused, and it is continually improving. So those are kind of 8 benchmarks they've put out. And then within that, the DFE have stipulated 5 different categories of different types of enrichment. Now, the one that links most meaningfully to RE is civic engagement. So your RE enrichment, places of worship, visiting speakers coming in, looking at diverse books and things like that, that will come under civic engagement there. Okay, and then I think this is my last one. before I hand back to Hannah, thinking about your resources. So we have got a document that we are continually updating, which is our recommended book list. If you would like a copy of the full book list, which is divided into EYFS, Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, and then kind of split up by worldview, do let us know. Or if you would like recommendations for a particular topic, a particular worldview, a particular year group, let us know and we can send you those. We've also got a guide to how to use artifacts effectively in your classroom. And also, think about what you actually use. And if buying something new in isn't feasible for you, often lots of places, religious resource centres, museums, libraries, councils have loan boxes which include religious artefacts, or you might be able to team up with local schools and make sure you're teaching things at different time, and you can maybe kind of share resources between you to reduce costs. Okay, I think that's it then.
I'm now racing to the end. Thank you everybody so much for joining us today, and for sticking with us. I know it seems like it's taken a little while to get through everything, but we were trying to summarize what's gone on and hopefully give some helpful advice for moving forward for September. But on the hottest day of the year, that maybe has taken its toll on everybody. So please do make a note of the email addresses that are on the slide. So we have our school supports at Jigsaw Education Group. So if you have a question about our PSHE or ROE programs in general, then do get in contact with them. If your question is specifically needing to talk to a regional advisor or more specific about the RE program or what we've talked about today, please do use the Jigsaw RE mentor email address, and those will get filtered to the right advisor from there, or our mentor Dave might get back to you himself. So thank you so much. We hope it's been helpful. A handout and a link to the recording will come out to you shortly. So hopefully that gives you a really great summary and reference point to go back to. We wish you all a really good luck for the end of term. Hopefully the heat will disappear soon, but I know there's so much goes on in this term. So keep going. You're nearly there. And we hope you have a restful summer before your big focus on RE in September. Thank you very much.
I think there is just one question. I know Sarah's just put it to that Becky asked about the right to withdraw, and if the policy is on the website, is that enough of the right to withdraw being on the website?
Yeah, I've just popped the link in the
Yeah.
chat, Matro guidance there, just because I know we're running short on time. I
I'm
think so.
wondering, Becky, are you an RE school? A Jigsaw RE school? Ah, okay. Well, we've got your email. I feel like I want to double check that for you, and just to make, because I think it is a tricky area, so I want to make sure that that's at half. Most of me is saying yes, and there's a little bit of a double check it. So Becky will have your email address from signing up for this webinar, so I will double check that as well and get back to you, because that's.
Yeah, you
Thank
want
you,
to be,
Laura.
Yeah,
definite.
you want to make sure that it's a definite. So I will write that down now, Becky, and I will double check and get back to you on that as well.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I took a minute there. I was trying to scroll back to find what the question was. So well done. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.